This podcast episode is for investor education purposes only and is not intended to provide and should not be relied on for investment advice. Consult your personal investment advisor before engaging in any securities transaction.
Your required minimum distribution age has potentially changed, and as a result, my opinion is that this also translates into an important saving and investment consideration change that will likely take on much more importance for you in your planning. And if you're charitable, this is a really great year to talk about bunching and lumping multiple years' worth of charitable giving into 1 year, this year. And I'll tell you how and why on today's June 29th Wise Investor Show. Thank you and welcome aboard another Wise Investor Show. My name is Greg Smith, certified financial planner and host of today's show and financial planner to many of our team's wonderful clients. In our financial planning meetings, I show the path forward and I do my best to provide tips, ideas, and strategies along the way that will either save money in the long run or keep money in your pockets and in your family. And it all starts with developing your financial plan, the financial framework to the financial life that you're intending. It's never too early to get started on the financial planning process, and if you're a client of the Wise Investor Group, well then you already know that you never have to be in the position of worrying or wondering where you stand. If you're already a client of our teams, well then you know that we commonly identify strategies that simply jump off the screen at us during our meeting. And with the framework of your financial plan in place, you can see for yourself what difference is made by applying for Social Security benefits at age 67 versus 70, paying off the mortgage, paying extra on the mortgage, or maintaining the mortgage as is. And of course, the answers are different for different financial plans. I always like examining what happens to the curve of the assets over time for any given choices that we might have in front of us. It's easily done. And the decision that you make can make hundreds of thousands of dollars of difference down the line. For a lot of our clients, we like to see the maximum sustainable spending power to determine how much over the next 12 months that particular client can spend so as to maximize quality of life while minimizing the fear of running out of money all at the same time. Once again, easily done. With a solid financial plan, all of this is possible, and we do it every day. We can do it for you too. So if you're not yet a client of ours, well, nothing stands in your way other than your ability to call us at 571-430-7200, or you can email me anytime at gregory.s.smith@raymondjames.com, and I'll be glad to help you set up a meeting. There's absolutely no need to white-knuckle your way through retirement. Let's help you sleep your best at night with nothing more than an hour meeting per year. That's all it'll take. So feel free to email me at gregory.s.smith@raymondjames.com, and I'll guide you in. One more quick announcement, and then we'll dive right into the meat of today's show. The quick announcement is such that I would like to state that the ideas and opinions I express on today's show are just simply my ideas, and I can't manage your financial plan from here. So please consult with your own attorney, accountant, financial planner, or tax advisor before implementing anything I happen to talk about on today's show. And with that, it's time to put on our thinking caps and start thinking like a planner. And when you think like a financial planner, you're thinking in terms of years and decades, well beyond this year. And when you think like a financial planner, you're also assessing and synthesizing a lot of information at once. One strategy can beget and welcome another advantageous action for you. A lot of strategies that are beneficial for clients have to do with knowing when there are opportunities to do something that could be beneficial down the road. They may not be as beneficial today, but that they could pay off later. And doing things that could be beneficial down the road often have to do with tax rate arbitrage, paying some tax now to avoid larger taxes later. As Ed Slott, CPA, the financial industry's leading expert on IRAs, says, the trick is not to defer as much as possible. The idea is to pay at the lowest tax rate possible. and I agree. That's how you keep more of your hard-earned money in your pockets and in your family. And part of paying the lowest tax rate possible is having an idea for when you're going to be forced to take money out of your IRA and your 401k accounts. That's what's known as your required minimum distribution. Your required minimum distribution age, provided you're not yet 73 years of age yet, has been adjusted, courtesy of the Secure Act 2.0. Your required minimum distribution age is no longer 70 and a half, and it's no longer 72. Your required minimum distribution age is now either 73 or 75, depending on what year you were born. If you turn 74 after 2033, then your required minimum distribution age is now 75. What that means is if you were born in the year 1960 or later, your required minimum distribution age is 75. If you're not yet subject to required distributions and you were born before 1960, your required minimum distribution age is 73. Either or. And this is very important to know, as you've been given extra tax years to work with before required minimum distributions have to start for you. This extends your window, if you were so interested, to make Roth IRA conversions during what would very likely be the lowest tax years of your life. So long as you've saved money in after-tax accounts to live off of during retirement, and I'm seeing longer and longer windows of time for clients to take advantage of that temporary and anomalous period of time when a client's tax rates never will have been and never will be lower than during that interim time period between retirement and having to take out required minimum distributions. So the fact that your required minimum distribution age has changed is, in my opinion, advantageous to the financial planning client, as it provides 1 to 3 more years to take advantage of those potentially very low tax years. When you think about it, if you've retired and you've saved enough in your joint account or your individual investment account or your trust account to live off of for long enough to get you to or through your required minimum distribution age, then during those years you're living off of capital gain assets rather than ordinary income assets. Don't forget, most typically every dollar that comes out of your 401k or your traditional IRA account adds to your ordinary income. And once you start distributing from your IRA, you start to realize that withholding 20%, let's say, for the federal government and another 5% to the state, if that happens to be what you withhold, well, what that means is if you withdraw, let's say, $5,000 a month from your IRA, well, what's left after tax withholding is what you're actually able to spend, which is $3,750. Well, wait a sec. I took out $5,000. Why do I only have $3,750? Well, you start to discover fast that not every dollar in that IRA of yours is spendable and usable by you. And that's why when there are opportunities and strategies that can help you keep more of your money in your pocket, well, those strategies are worth considering. I've seen financial plans where the client saved enough in their after-tax accounts to give them a lot of wiggle room, and by wiggle room, I mean a lot of things, such as the ability to decide to delay taking Social Security until age 70 because they don't necessarily need the funds, nor do they want the extra income eating into their tax brackets. The reason for that? Well, for some clients I work with, the only income coming in the door post-retirement might be dividends, interest, and realized capital gains generated from the after-tax account. Not everyone realizes that qualifying dividends and long-term realized capital gains can have extra preferential tax treatment up to the top of the 12% tax bracket. And to that point, if all of your realized capital gains and qualifying dividends are confined to the bottom 2 brackets, the 10 and the 12% tax brackets, then those qualifying dividends and those long-term capital gains that you realized are taxed at the whopping rate of 0%. Zero. Which creates an incredibly tax-friendly environment for new retirees, provided that they saved enough in their after-tax accounts, not just their 401ks and IRAs, but to after-tax investments to take advantage of that temporary and low tax atmosphere that could possibly lend itself to either pushing out paying taxes on IRA distributions until necessary, or better yet, Roth IRA conversions, where you take money out of your traditional IRA and you put it into your Roth IRA and you pay the tax rate of the day, which by that time should be low. And then you never worry about taxation again on that component of your money that you converted over to the Roth. And from there on out, you'll enjoy tax-free growth, compounding, dividends, interest, and distributions. And best of all, there are no required minimum distributions associated with the Roth IRA. The bottom line here, and the big takeaway that I want you to get from the first half of today's Wise Investor Show, is that now that the required minimum distribution age has been extended from the age of 72 to the age of 73 or 75, depending on when you were born, it has become much more important to save and invest while you're working into accounts other than IRAs and 401ks to buy you and your family additional years worth of lower tax environments to be able to do something with. Saving and investing extra into your after-tax accounts will provide you with additional years of opportunity to take advantage of tax rate arbitrage situations where you ought to have the opportunity, if you wish, to convert some of your IRA to the Roth, only at a tax rate that will be much lower than both the rate you deferred at originally as well as the rate of tax you'll likely start paying once required minimum distributions ultimately do set in for you. And with that, if you were willing to pay a little bit more in tax before you otherwise would have had to, you'll most likely be benefiting your future self with greater freedom from future tax rate fluctuations. You'll have chipped away at the required minimum distribution amounts you otherwise would have had to pay taxes on every year down the line. And you'll also have greater freedom of choice as to where you pull usable, spendable money from later on. It's a win-win-win situation for you. And it was because you saw that the required minimum distribution age had changed for the later, and thus you decided to save and invest more as a result into accounts in addition to your 401k and your traditional IRAs. Any questions about that? Give me a buzz anytime, 571-430-7200, or email me at gregory.s.smith@raymondjames.com. I've got one more tip for you that could also serve to put or keep more of your hard-earned money in your pocket when I come back. You're listening to Greg Smith, financial planner with the Wise Investor Group of Raymond James, and I'll be right back.
The political temperature is only going to get hotter. It doesn't mean you need to lose your cool and make emotional decisions. I'm Simon Hamilton, Managing Director and Portfolio Manager with the Wise Investor Group of Raymond James. Every week we discuss the latest financial trends and what investors need to know. To help filter out the noise distracting you from sound portfolio management and how to become a better informed, wise investor, listen to us at The Wise Investor Show at raymondjames.com/The Wise Investor Group, or just find us on your favorite podcast app.
The information contained in this podcast represents the opinions of the hosts and guests and does not necessarily represent the views of Raymond James and Associates, Inc., the Wise Investor Group, or their respective affiliates and employees. This podcast is for investor educational purposes only and is not intended to provide and should not be relied on for investment advice. The contents of this podcast do not purport to constitute a comprehensive summary of all information necessary to base an investment decision. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. Securities mentioned in this podcast may not be suitable for all investors. Seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your individual situation. Discuss any tax or legal matters with the appropriate professional advisors. Raymond James and Associates, Inc., member New York Stock Exchange, SIPC.
Thank you, and welcome back to the Wise Investor Show. I'm Greg Smith, head financial planner with the Wise Investor Group of Raymond James, and I'm delighted to be here with you. To recap what we've covered so far today, we're talking about a couple of the nuances and offshoots of the moving of your required minimum distribution age from 72 to either 73 or 75, depending on when you were born. If you're not yet subject to required minimum distributions and you were born before 1960, your required minimum distribution age is now 73. If you were born 1960 or later, your required minimum distribution age is now 75. What this means is that to better prepare for a longer period of time between retirement and mandatory required minimum distributions, you probably ought to be making a concerted effort to save and invest more into accounts other than 401ks and traditional IRAs. And by doing so, what you're doing is creating more of an opportunity to take advantage of what should be a lower tax atmosphere for that period of time between retirement and your required minimum distribution age. There's another strategy you can use to create a low tax atmosphere for yourself where there otherwise might not have been one. It's to harness your charitable intent and combine it with additional strategies. You're probably charitable, and you're also probably more charitable than you think you are. If you belong to a church or a synagogue, well, then chances are you're giving money to charity. And if you intend to continue to belong to your church or to your synagogue, well, chances are you're going to continue to pay dues or tithing, both now and into the future. Well, there's a strategy that you may not have considered to take advantage of, which is what's called bunching or lumping together multiple years worth of charitable giving into 1 year, let's say this year, to finally be able to itemize and deduct that charitable gift. So here's what I'm thinking. Let's say that you belong to a church or synagogue and you pay dues regularly to your place of worship. Well, there are a lot of ways to be charitable, and you might be writing checks or paying your dues with your credit card. And what you're likely finding is that while you're contributing to charity, it just isn't quite enough to get you over that standard deduction hump. It's grown substantially since the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was passed back in 2017. So since your charitable gift for this year wasn't enough to get you over the standard deduction, what you gave to charity was probably pretty much lost and absorbed into your standard deduction. And as a result, well, you really were charitable because there was likely little to no tax benefit for you. What I'm thinking, though, is that you might consider opening up what's called a donor-advised fund for yourself and for your family. A donor-advised fund is another term for your opening up a charitable account in your name that you'll start using as a central repository for all of your future charitable giving. And if you give money to your church or your synagogue every month or every year, what you could do to get yourself over that standard deduction bar is to advance, say, 5 to 10 years worth of future charitable giving and put that entire amount into your donor-advised fund, and then you simply send out those 5 to 10 years worth of charitable donations from your donor-advised fund over these next 5 to 10 years. Only you will have gotten that big charitable contribution deduction up front for this year. 5 to 10 years worth of charitable giving deductible up front in the year you make that big donor-advised fund contribution. Your charities haven't gotten anything quite yet, but you just got a big, big deduction. Taking this one step further, for example, let's say you contribute $5,000 a year to your place of worship. Let's also say, for example, that you were prepared to contribute 5 years worth of charitable giving to your donor-advised fund charitable account for that big upfront charitable deduction. So that would be, 5 years times $5,000, that's $25,000. But don't write a check for $25,000 to your donor-advised fund. Put $25,000, if you happen to have it, worth of highly appreciated long-term investments into your donor-advised fund. And once you put it into your donor-advised fund, you won't have to pay capital gains taxes on the sale because it doesn't pay capital gains taxes on sales of highly appreciated stock. And you can keep it in stock, you could diversify it if you wish, which also serves to preserve and protect your liquidity that you have on hand. It also saves and prevents you from recognizing a gain in your taxable account and having to pay taxes on it. And now, with a $25,000 charitable donation booked for this year, you're likely now in a much better position to itemize and take advantage of that charitable deduction, finally. Continuing along the theme, you can then buy back in your investment account that highly appreciated stock that you just placed over into your donor-advised fund to then subsequently increase the tax basis on that same investment if you so wish. That'll reduce your future taxation going forward. And then over the next 5 years, you're sending money out of your donor-advised fund to your place of worship. They get their dues. You got the tax deduction up front, and you'll have a great new repository for future charitable giving and potentially a wonderful topic to start discussing with your children if you want to start sharing your charitable values with them. And because you've lumped together multiple years' worth of charitable donations into 1 year, you've then created and fabricated yourself right out of thin air another potentially lower tax year for yourself to then potentially use to strategize for yourself and your family further. By bunching and lumping multiple years' worth of charitable giving into this 1 year, you've potentially then created this vacuum, this void of income that wasn't there before that all of a sudden might allow you to then pair that action with something else of your choosing, a Roth IRA conversion, a recognition of income, a realization of capital gain, to potentially reduce the tax effects of what might otherwise have been a much more costly endeavor. It is important to remember that you're bound by the same calendar year with these ideas, so you're going to want to pair the donor-advised fund contribution with another paired strategy within the same calendar year. Otherwise, the opportunity to strategize passes you by once the calendar turns to the next year. So when you think like a planner, you think further down the line and you consider and you synthesize a lot of information and strategies all at the same time. There's lots to consider in the world of financial planning, and my goal for today was to expose you to some of the ideas I've had as of late to get you thinking like a planner as well. If you have any questions about anything I've covered today, or if I can be of any help to you and your family, please reach out to me at gregory.s.smith@raymondjames.com or call me anytime at 571-430-7200, and it will be my pleasure to connect with you. Thanks so much for tuning in today and for your time and attention. And until next time, I'm Greg Smith with the Wise Investor Group, and I wish you wise investing. Thank you very much.
The information contained in this podcast represents the opinions of the hosts and guests and does not necessarily represent the views of Raymond James and Associates, Inc., the Wise Investor Group, or their respective affiliates and employees. This podcast is for investor educational purposes only and is not intended to provide and should not be relied on for investment advice. The contents of this podcast do not purport to constitute a comprehensive summary of all information necessary to base an investment decision. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. Securities mentioned in this podcast may not be suitable for all investors. Seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your individual situation. Discuss any tax or legal matters with the appropriate professional advisors. Raymond James and Associates, Inc., member New York Stock Exchange, SIPC.